Parents of Reddit, what is the worst thing you have ever done in front of your teenage kid? I got caught masturbating. Didn't hear them come in. They threw open the shower curtain to prank me. Couldn't look them in the eye for a week. Edit. The prank was the bucket of freezing cold water they were about to throw on me. Not just ripping the curtain open to expose my shame. Also, my top comment is about masturbating. Not sure if I should be proud or ashamed. My husband left us when my daughter was 9. I was single until last year when left she high school and went to college. When she was 15 she was supposed to be staying the night at a friend's house, so I had a friend of my own over. We got a little drunk and started hooking up on the couch, and I got his pants down and he had the biggest rig I've ever seen in person. I went down on him. And then my daughter came home early because her friend got sick. She walked in on me with this guy's giant D in my mouth and went, "Mom, what the duck? Holy it," and ran out of the room. We were all mortified. Edit. Holy hell, this blew up. No, I don't want to see your D's. His size was only important to the story because it was big enough to make my poor daughter's reaction go from mortified to just shocked. Then back to mortified. No, life isn't a porn movie. She and I laugh about it now. I drank way too much whiskey one night when my son was about 10 or 11. Woke up to take a leak and stood in front of his Xbox and just started pissing. Allegedly. I have no memory of this. He said he yelled at me to stop, but I just glared at him. Edit. Stopped drinking a long time ago, BTW. I am so late to the party. But my dad always tells the story of when he was 6 or 7 and his father, my grandpa, came home from a rowdy night of drinking. My dad says my grandpa sidled slowly into the kitchen with a rope in his hand, and my grandma, who was sitting at the kitchen table, asked what he had done. He then led a miniature pony into the kitchen. The pony was named Speedy. He bit like a methodical and would never let anyone ride him. And one day he ran off. They lived around a lot of farmland, so we like to think someone took him in and got the devil out of him. My 79-year-old grandmother had sex with my mom's childhood friend in the kitchen of her house, and my mom walked in on them. It disturbed my mom and she said that my grandma's wig was coming off. Parent tells the story. Funny and embarrassing. Child tells the story. Sad and emotional scarring. This happened to my husband. We had a whole gaggle of teenage kiddos over at our house one Friday night. My husband had a few beers and then snuck off behind the garage to have a smoke. He doesn't smoke in front of me since I quit. He had bummed a really strong cig, and it made him super dizzy. Just as he was keeling over, a group of teenagers came along the path just in time to see him fall over onto the lawnmower. He pretended to be getting ready to mow, which made them howl with laughter. They still talk about that time dad fell and tried to cover it up by saying he was going to mow at 11 PM. As my mum is near incapable of using a computer, I'll share on her behalf. One night she got ridiculously drunk and came home. She called me from her bedroom and said she had something to show me, and I reluctantly go to her. She's in her bedroom holding a thick translucent purple vibrator, and she says to me in slurred speech, "This is what mommy uses when she's lonely." To do this day, I don't know WTF she was thinking when she did this. Edit. As lots of people have asked. I was about 15 at the time. Another edit. I should also clarify that she wasn't using the vibrator, just waving it around, which isn't much better. Friend was the parent. Found him in complete shock, saying he was trying to stay calm, but knowing he'd just messed up with his teenage daughter. Before breakfast at the start of what was going to be a non-stop busy day, he decided to shoot a foreplay text at his girlfriend about some kinky thing he was going to do to her that night. At the table he decided to sneak it in while his daughters went into the kitchen to grab the food. Only he accidentally sent it to one of them, and it notified on her phone as they were walking back to the table. He said the girls sat, and the one asked why he just texted her. He said as he quizzically watched her eyes process what she read, look at him with betrayal, and then his heart slammed to a stop. He realized what happened too late. Or he said he would have dove across the table and knocked the phone out of her hand. Cue a profuse apology and long address to many tearful questions about how daddy wasn't lying that every man should respect women. It's just that some women want to have certain things done and said when it's only supposed to be a private matter between two consenting adults. She now is over it. But from then on he went from being her hero to just an any man. Edit for clarity. When I was like 12, I was spending the night at a friend's house. I started feeling sick around midnight, so I went to ask his dad, who usually stayed up playing video games on their PC, to call my parents to come pick me up. When I walked out, he was furiously beating his meat with some generic as duck porn on the monitor. I decided to just go back to bed. It's not that I think having a wank is bad, but when your kid has their 12-year-old friend over, maybe postpone that or do it in a room with a lock or a door. Edit. Ouch. Right in the inbox. Good morning Reddit. : When I was 13 or 14 my mom was deep into her meth addiction but I didn't realize at the time. One night I had my best friend over and my mom brought us, along with my little brother who was 4ish, with to pick up money from my stepdad. After we get there and she runs in, she comes back out and hands something to my friend and asks her to put it in her bra until we get home since she was driving without insurance and a suspended license. We get home. Friend gives it back. We forget about it. Anyway, 10 years later we realize my mom had actually given her the meth to hold on to in case she was pulled over and searched or arrested. So that was something. Edit. Well holy it. My mom is fine now. She hit her 3 years sober this year so we're really proud of her. She's still kind of mess but I love her anyway. For all the things she did when I was growing up and the situations she let and encouraged me to get into. It's amazing I've grown up to be the person I am, and same for my little brother. I'm incredibly proud of her, and while I acknowledge the ducked up I forgive her and I think that's all she really wants in return. Most recovering addicts just want to know they're still loved and that they're forgiven. I'm not a parent so I'll answer for my parents. Throwing my mom down and pinning her to the floor and threatening to break her arm and then telling me, 13 years old at the time, that if I called 911 like my mom was begging me to do that he would kill her. So that, don't do that. We had guests around. The children all had gifts, and the eldest was just being a ducking twat in the way that teenage girls can be. Being a grumpy it, moaning about everything. Everything was unfair. Her sisters had better whatever than she did, embarrassing herself and me, and my wife was just humoring her, to make the evening go smoother and to not fall out. 2 visitors, who live abroad, wanted a photograph, and my eldest threw a proper strop about it, and I snapped and told her to stop being such a ducking twat. I have worried about that moment most days, for about 5 years, worrying that I am a terrible father. Then I came to this thread and feel like goddamn hero compared to most of these stories. Best thread ever for me. Update. When I wrote best thread ever for me I meant that it made me feel better about myself. But this is on its way to actually being my top comment, which has freaked me out a little, if I am honest. Update 2. Okay. Now it is the biggest comment I ever made and the 3rd biggest thing I ever posted. I am bemused, but vaguely pleased, I guess. I haven't drunk much alcohol over the last 10 years but about 3 years ago I had a few too many. Kids were 13 and 16. We'd gone to a relative's barbecue which was walking distance from home. Hadn't planned on drinking but that's the way the night went. Eldest went home early so the boy and I wandered back after midnight. I remember play fighting with them in the living room. The next thing I remember is being in bed feeling sick. I was sick where I lay and tried to get up but couldn't and thought well I've messed the bed up already, I may as well just carry on here. Then I got up to have a shower, opposite end of the house. Kids woke up. I didn't have a towel so I ran back through to my room in the booth and collapsed on the floor. I woke up hours later. The kids had covered me up, stripped and cleaned my bed, washed all my sheets, dried them and remade my bed. They still bring it up. Remember when mum was drunk and threw up over herself? Yeah. Don't talk about all the times I wasn't drunk and was being a good mum, eh? I like to think of it as a deterrent. Well, you can tell what my parents did by my username. Friend's mum in HS used to get drunk, pop pills, sometimes hurt herself, on purpose or just from falling downstairs, nearly every night. He wasn't in a good place. I used to tell him I wanted to come and watch TV at his place because his TV was better, but it was just so he had someone to help whilst he inevitably called the ambulance or police. Sometimes she would wander off. She eventually sorted herself out and became an amazing grandmother. And I got to watch a ton of music videos on the nights when she stayed drunk in her room. I miss the 80s. Geez, this thread is either my parents ducked in front of me or my abusive dad tried to kill my mom in front of me and my mom threatened to commit suicide in front of me. I'm the teenager in this scenario. My mom was addicted to painkillers while I was growing up. Like, really addicted. To the point where she would have regular overdoses. Guess who had to deal with the aftermath of those overdoses? The same guy that missed at least 7 days a school year to sit with her in the hospital while she was in an overdose-induced coma. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she'd have died by now without me. Not the worst thing in life, but I do get a little angry behind the wheel. I was driving with my son, and when other drivers do incredibly inconsiderate or just plain stupid things, I feel the overwhelming need to see who the F this person is. I slam my horn and sometimes hit the gas a bit to catch up and overtake them, give them a look, or shout at them, often through a closed window. Now my son isn't, as always been, as many kids, observant. We'd watch shows together, and ever since he was small, I'd notice him watch me laugh, then look back at the TV, then back at me. He was building an internal library of what humor was. In the same sense, I see him observing me on the road and I can't help but feel ashamed at my anger and response to it. I need to be better for my boy's sake. Oh man, I came here for funny stories. Not this. Kinda funny. When I was about 12, my mom threw a wooden cutting board at my stepdad. He dodged it, and the cutting board obliterated some super fancy antique set of spice storage jars my mom held dear to her heart. This was, of course, my stepdad's fault. Hope this qualifies. With our daughter away at college, the wife and I would take advantage of many situations to do the bump. One day I came home from work and I heard a shower running. I went into the bathroom and reached inside the shower curtain and pinched her ass. All of a sudden I hear this voice say, "What the duck, Dad?" Apparently our daughter decided to come home for the weekend unannounced. I think I was more ducked up over it than she was. My husband made a crack about how we were going to make the bed bang against the wall later that night. He didn't realize our 13-year-old daughter was in the room. She was horrified. Every night for a month afterward, she had a crying panic attack, which required that I sit and comfort her until she could sleep. I'll always believe she did this subconsciously to prevent my husband and me from being in the same bedroom at night. Edit. Grammar. The worst thing I could think of was my dad yelling at some guy that stole a parking space he was waiting for. This thread makes me appreciate having such a good childhood. I was a college freshman and had come home for winter break, and the boyfriend had just flown in to visit. He was going to meet my parents for the first time ever. I was out giving him a tour of my hometown when I got a call from my dad. All he said was, "Pumpkin, get back the house and check out this big ass fire I made." I drove us home after he spam called me 4 more times and kept yelling about how cool the fire was. I rarely ever saw my dad drink when I was growing up. He'd always been hyper responsible and straight-laced. He's exactly like Hank Hill, except with a different southern accent, and he's a nerdy electrical engineer instead of a propane salesman. I came home to find my dad and his brother blackout drunk, stumbling around a huge bonfire in the backyard looking for more sticks to throw in the pit, holding their own half-empty bottles of whiskey, and wearing matching cowboy hats. I have no idea where they got the cowboy hats. My then boyfriend introduced himself, and instead of asking him about how his flight was, how school is going, where we went that afternoon, or any of the normal pleasantries you'd ask your daughter's boyfriend, my dad blurts out, "Have I ever told you all about the one and only time I ever did sugar?" He launched into a story about how he did lines of coke in a hot tub with the local weather lady at a community theater cast party in the 80s. Then he and my uncle spent hours telling us crazy shit they did before my cousins and I were born. And then they called my future husband a pussy for not doing whiskey shots. My mom was a very mild alcoholic. At least she was a happy drunk. Anyway, when I was about 9, it was her 40th birthday party. My parents threw big parties for the 0s. So they had a tent out in the backyard and all their friends were over, and after about 4 hours of heavy drinking and catered food, it's time to start opening the gifts. My mom opens the one from my band teacher. They were good friends and later my sister and I decided she was having an affair with him at the time. And it's a music box which my mom loves full of condoms. I guess my dad had just gotten a vasectomy at the time and so as a rebuttal my mom decides to bring down the collar of her already low cut shirt and flashes the entire audience. I went to bed after that. TLDR, don't whip your tits out in front of your kids. Edit. Oh yeah. And my parents drove drunk with us in the car a lot when we were kids. Like every single weekend for about 14 years. That was a fun realization. Went to my 12-year-old son's end of season dinner for his sports team. Just an informal get together at a local family pizza place on a Friday night. One of the parents brought multiple cases of wine with him. Wine salesman. And we all went a bit nuts. I don't drink much these days so it hit me extra hard. Apparently when we were walking home I was hiding in the bushes then leaping out at random people pretending to be a Nosferatu type vampire and hissing at them. Hissing. My poor kid was mortified. Peas, I'm a hobbit sized woman so the people passing weren't scared by me. Just bemused annoyed. Okay, I am a parent with a host of stupid things done. But my oldest is only 8 now. But I am a scout slugger regularly dealing with our teenage rover scouts. D. And at our clubhouse we got a parking problem with our neighboring gardening club. So when one particular nasty neighbor yet again parked in our spots we might have put whistles in her exhaust pipe and laughed madly when she drove away and all those whistles actually worked as intended. And all that in front of quite a few rover scouts. Yeah, that wasn't really showing a good example and we did tell them that. Kinda. We just couldn't keep our faces straight anymore, ha 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 ha. My dad is a recovering alcoholic. Once when I was a teenager he came home drunk and it was just my younger brother, his friend and me home. He wanted to take my brother to the store with him for whatever reason but I wouldn't let him cause he was drunk. I was standing between him and my brother and he got mad that I wouldn't let my brother go with him so he hit me. Before that he had only spanked me when I was a lot younger and had it coming. It didn't really hurt, maybe it was the adrenaline. At the time it just hurt more realizing that he would actually hit me. Besides this one incident he would always tell us how much he loved us when he was drunk. So things could have been a lot worse growing up. Kids telling stories about their parents. I don't mind it though. Pretty interesting stuff so far. As a teen my dad would go off on me over tiny things and kick me out of the house. Only to come and try to pick me up 10 miles down the road. I bought potato salad from the deli and was putting it into a glass cookware as if it was homemade. I got busted. Equals. Again. Kid not a parent. When I was 13 my stepdad was an alcoholic. He was the kind who everyone knew had a problem but would always console my mom with stories about how he's getting better and not to worry. Well, I'm coming home from school that fateful afternoon. I walk in the door and my mom gets up from the couch. Starts a beeline straight towards me all while screaming, "What did you do?" To my only remark was, "I have no idea." She gets right up in my face and starts to blame me for all the alcohol missing from the basement. We had a decent stash. The bottles were all empty and she had just now noticed that this hadn't always been the case. Apparently my stepdad was the first on her blame list for this, however per the aforementioned consoling she believed him when he told her it wasn't him and went on to blame her 13-year-old son for drinking upwards of 10 handles of hard liquor. I lost a lot of respect for my parents that day. That was 12 years ago. My mom still thinks I did it. They've since gotten a divorce. I still love my mom but I'm very aware of her mental abilities and cognition. Got me addicted to painkillers at the age of 13. Then continued to feed them to me till age 18. After a few years and many attempts to get clean. I'm 26 and have now been clean for almost 2 years. Edit. Thank you for all the kind words to those I didn't reply to. It's the little things like that help too. Going to a movie with my 15-year-old. Getting out of the car I turn just wrong and twinge my back. She asks what's wrong and I say I threw my back out humping your mom last night. She is looking at me like a deer in headlights. And I cannot stop laughing. Which incidentally did not help my back. I'll comment on my ex-BF behalf. When his sister turned 16 she has a party hosted at her 50-year-old mum's house. Her mum got drunk and hooked up with one of the 16-year-old's male friends. She told me and my ex this on a visit to England, giggling like it wasn't a disgusting, horrifying story. My mum used to tell me she was gonna kill herself and she wanted me and everyone else to know it would be my fault. All a bit messed up really. I woke up at night to grab some food. As I walked to the stairs I saw my dad crawling naked on the stairs making sounds like Tarzan on its way to my mom. Never watched Tarzan again. Literally everything I do is the worst thing ever. So embarrassing. Oh, the joys of having teenage kids. This entire thread is people answering for their parents. Not the parent, but my boyfriend in high school was having a friend stay over and he forgot something at home and he went in to grab it and walked in on an orgy. We all felt so bad for that kid, like, oh god. My mum has destroyed the house in front of me 3 times when I was 8-11. Got drunk and pretty much just deleted my sister's room of anything that survived the entire past of its lifespan. Late, but funny. My girlfriend's dad came home late after a night of drinking when she was a kid. Didn't know my girlfriend was having her friends for a sleepover. He stumbled in her room to give her a kiss goodnight and tripped over a cot in the middle of her room. He was confused as to why it was there, so he did the nice dad thing of putting her cot away for her. Turns out there was a teenage girl sleeping in said cot that got folded up. Makes for good storytelling. I'm pulling for this post to trend cause I wanna see some of these answers. I am a parent, but my kids are still really little, so this story isn't about them. I teach 8th graders, 13-15-year-olds depending on their birthday. I am normally a history teacher, but this past year I also taught English. I was trying to think of a way of explaining writing a 5-paragraph essay. You have your introduction, 3-paragraph body, and conclusion. After I explained that I said, think of it like a sandwich. You can't leave out your bun or you are just left holding your meat. I was horrified. I think I will stick to teaching history. That way I can ask them why they are giggling when I teach them about Watergate and my slidder shell, says Deep Throat. My little guy was about 1 year old. He loved playing with dupless. They're just big Legos for toddlers. We'd build stuff together almost every day with his dupless. One day, I was high on meth. And when I'm on meth, I don't like to interact with anyone. I was ducking around on my computer all day, occasionally hiding in the bathroom to take a hit or two, then coming back out to my computer. And I've got the TV on Nick Jr. to babysit for me so the kid will leave me alone. Now it's 9 PM and I'm gonna put the kid to bed and I think to myself how nice it will be with him asleep cause I'll be free to lerp out on my computer and maybe jerk off or something once he's in bed. I stand up from my computer desk and say to the kid, okay, buddy, and he looks at me, grabs a Duplo block and smiles and runs to me all excited because he believes I'm going to finally actually play with him for the first time today. But nope, he was wrong. I was just putting him in bed so I could keep acting like a meth addict without the guilt of ignoring my kid. That may not have been the last time I used, but it was one of the last. The kid is 6 now and I haven't touched the stuff since he was 1. And I make time for him every single day. I screamed at a rich who almost hit me. We were walking through the parking lot and it was bright at. I've got 3 girls so I watch cars pretty carefully. I ushered my girls in front of me and started walking again and this car literally brushed the whole length of the car across my back and ass. I punched her car and screamed at her. She could have killed one of my kids and pretty obviously just quickly pulled out without looking. I then realized she was on her phone and started swearing and yelling even more. She then sped out of the parking lot and I felt bad for setting a bad example for my kids. Also my hand hurt from hitting her car. Damn, I thought this was going to be a funny thread : till that alcohol is usually poisonous to the family structure. I'm not a parent, but I lived with a woman who had a teen son who had managed to impregnate his girlfriend. They had a child together. He lived with us and he and his girlfriend were on and off. One night, she spent the night at the house. Now, I had a pretty serious no sex in this house rule. I mean, I'm paying 100% of the bills here and if you want to have sex, do it on a dead-end street in the car like civilized teenagers. Nope. Come midnight, there is loud sex happening in the next room. After a few minutes, it stops and suddenly my girlfriend is missing from the bed. I search for her and she is downstairs on the couch crying. Now, this is where I could have done about 100 different adult things. Anything from consoling her, to kicking out the little whore currently upstairs. I do none of these things. Instead, I take my girlfriend by the hand, walk her upstairs and loudly pound the ever-loving duck out of her for 45 minutes. The headboard of my bed is smashing against the wall between us and little it and whore. I banged my GF 6 ways to Sunday going way out of my way to make it as loud and as long as humanly possible. It got really raunchy and at one point I remember my GF loudly saying you've never been so far up my ass before. So, really raunchy. The next morning's breakfast was glorious. Not a single word was spoken as the four of us ate. Checkmate. At a family barbecue, after food is all ate and things wind down, we'll usually sit in the backyard until the wee hours drinking, bulleting and roasting each other while the kids play inside. It was the wife's turn to DD, so I'll let loose. Stepdaughter, 13, came outside to tattle on one of the other kids, and after being told that nothing was wrong and quit trying to snitch for the sake of being a snitch, decided to start being a little jerk and starts trying to throw shade. Piss weak but annoying for drunk me. You're a gross jerk and you smell bad. Type stuff. Somewhere, a bit of brain that isn't fully marinated in rum sees the response coming and begs the rest of the brain to just stop. Drunk brain that's still in top roast form disregards the suggestion and warms up the voice box. Oh yeah? Well, I ducked your mom. You could hear the record scratch. Everything stopped ducking dead for about 10 seconds. The kid's face goes from cocky little teenage sneer to slack-jawed and dumbfounded as it starts to sink in. Then one person laughs. Then three. Then everyone, my sober wife included, just lose their it entirely. I just totally duck and eviscerated my stepdaughter in front of everyone at the party and was so it-faced I wasn't totally sure why they were laughing because it wasn't that funny. Kid turns beat ass red and ran back inside the house and didn't make so much as a peep for the rest of the night. So yeah, that's probably a therapist bill I'm gonna have I pay sometime down the road. And she refused to talk to me for a week. Quietest week ever. I'm not a parent, but when I was growing up I lived next to this family with two boys and their mom would always cheat on their dad pretty openly. She would constantly invite her boyfriend over to their house and everyone including the neighbors knew about it. Eventually he had enough of it one day and decided to beat her and sent her to the hospital and they got divorced. Although the older son later told me that the reason why the mom did that was because their dad was like super controlling and tried to dictate everything in her life after they got married. They were in an arranged marriage and the mom's boyfriend was actually her ex-boyfriend from high school. Also the dad was a raging alcoholic.